welcome back, everybody, or if this is your first time visiting my channel, welcome. Thanks for checking it out. It's Tom Christie back in the painting studio, continuing this series on creating a gunning pair of magnum-sized Goldeneyes. These are about 10% larger than life size. They're cork-bodied, and I did a whole series on the carving of these birds. If you want to refer to that, please do. This is the beginning of painting the gunning pair, and we'll start by putting a textured base coat on both birds and then get started on laying in the colors on these. This is going to be more of a gunning style, simplified paint job, not a lot of intricate feathering, just simulating the birds with a minimal amount of paint detail. So that's always a challenge, but I'm looking forward to it. Hey, if you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please hit that subscribe button. It does help me out. It's free. I'll keep it that way. I'm building this channel with resources to try to inspire people, help people get going in carving wildfowl of any kind, be it hunting decoys or other types of carvings. I get a lot of joy out of it, and I just wanted to give back in this way to provide resources for people that might be encouraged by my channel. All right, let's get going. All right, I've mixed up a mixture of about 50% Liquitex heavy body acrylic and 50% Liquitex gesso, and made this kind of thick paint, and I'm going to use that to paint on the bird, and then I'm going to use some cheap packing sponge to put a little bit of texture on the feathered portions of the bird, leave the bill smooth. And if you've seen any of my other painting videos, you probably are familiar with this process, but I'll show a bit of it here in case you haven't seen that. I'm going to paint the bill smooth with like a 1-inch wide brush to minimize brush strokes. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Just put a base coat on the bill. Make sure I've got paint up in the separation between the upper and lower mandible to protect that area from any water. Now I'm going to lay on pretty heavy this material, and I'm going to work in sections at a time. I'm going to put some on my palette here, work that into the sponge so it's consistent, and then go over the bird with that. And you can see that is very coarse. I prefer a very fine texture, so it's not like sandpaper. It just gives me a little bit of texture on the feathered portions of the bird again to help with some of the painting techniques that I like to use. You can make your bird smooth. It's up to you. The painting techniques will still work. And I'll probably go over this bird a couple of times like this and really work the texture so it's consistent. But just know that I'll do that on both birds, and then we'll come back. I'm painting right over the eye, and we can remove that material later with an X-Acto. It won't scratch the glass of the eye. But that way I make sure I get material right down around the eye. All right, I'll be back. Okay, I've done a little layout work with the chalk pencil on the Drake, and a lot of white and black on the Drake. So we'll start with an off-white mix of gesso with just a little bit of raw umber to knock down the brightness a bit. make it more of an off-white. I'm going to paint the side pockets, the neck, the white cheek patch with that white. And that'll take a couple of coats. So we'll get started on that next. I'm also going to paint this area above the side pocket that is white back to the speculum. I've got just a 1-inch wide angle brush. I'm also going to paint the bottom of the bird white, since the majority of the belly is white on the bird. So this will take some time, and rather than have you just watch me slap on this white, I'll go ahead and get that done and then come back. These areas where I'm getting close to the black, I'm just making sure I don't have a hard line there. All right, get this white done and I'll be back. Now I'm going to paint the head carbon black. I'm going to make the bill slightly lighter with kind of a charcoal gray color. So right now I'm just dabbing around the patch so that we don't have a paint line there. Just keep this soft as I go around that white patch. And this will take a couple of coats. Again, I'm painting right over the eye. You can remove that paint later. I'm also going to paint the scapulars and the tertials carbon black. And then I'll be back. For the bill, I've added a little nimbus gray to carbon black, and then put in some burnt umber to warm that mix up a bit, to come up with this kind of very dark charcoal gray color for the bill. I'm going to paint that on the entire bill for now, a couple of coats. For the rump, between the tertials here and the tail, I've added nimbus gray to the bill mix to lighten it up a bit, and some burnt umber again, so we have a nice warm value of dark gray. And I'm painting the upper and lower tail, the side here. This is going to lighten up down here and lighten up under the tail here. You can see the different value between the dark gray and the carbon black there. A couple of coats. Just a quick look at that blended area on both sides. And then we can overlay a few feathers. Now I want to work in these transitional areas between the off-white. I'm using some off-white here, and that's going to fade into this gray value above. I'm starting by just putting a rough blend across there, and we'll work and to build that up and get a nice soft transition. I'm going to do the same thing back here with the off-white under the tail area. And it kind of fades into the gray. Right in this area. So not trying to do it all in one coat. It's going to take multiple coats and then some transitional blends with lighter values of gray between those areas. Get a nice soft transition. So I'll work this for a while and then come back. Now I'm using some Nimbus Gray darkened with a little bit of carbon black and burnt umber. Just light enough so it shows up here. I'm going to outline the primaries. I'm going to use that same mix to put an outline on the tail feathers here. We want this to be pretty subtle so we don't lighten the tail feathers too much. Taking a little damp filbert with some carbon black and just darkening the tips of these just by scrubbing over them a few times, just to make those primaries pop a little bit out from the rest of the rump or back into the bird. I'll do the same thing with the tail feathers. Again, a damp filbert with a little bit of carbon black, and I'm just going to go into the rear edge of these feathers, darken them just a bit by scrubbing across. And letting that fade out. Now I've got a little angled brush and using that same lighter gray value, just putting in some feather edges here, a little bit lighter, just to indicate some feather structure. And I'll lighten that up as I go down towards these lighter values by adding some Nimbus Gray. So they show up down here. I'm not trying to do a bunch of blending, just keep it pretty simple, like a single brush stroke. So I'll fill those out. Just use carbon black. Pull in a few feather quills here. Same thing up here. Let's put some quills in those big tail coverts as well. Leave these the way they are. Now I'm taking a little burnt umber with a very slight amount of Nimbus Gray, very little paint on the brush, and just scrubbing a little bit of a highlight in the center of each of these scapular feather groups, back to the tertials, and also a little bit on the cape, so that we can put a few feather indications on the back here. And this gives us a little highlight. We'll come back with carbon black and put a few feathers in here. For the tertials, I'm just doing an outline in that same mix that we used back here. These remain very dark, so I just want to show an indication of the tertials here layered. And fade that out going forward. I've got a little cleanup to do there to get those shapes right. And I'll come back with this gray value and cover up some of that black. Got some carbon black. It's gonna put some quills in those tertials. Now I've got a 1/2 inch filbert comb, and I'm just going to use that to kind of pull in some indication of scapulars here without a lot of detail, just try to overlap some of those. Just a quick look at that scapular area. It's a good quick way to put an indication of some layered feathers on a gunning bird. Now I want to put in these side feather markings, and this last one back here tends to be a little shorter, and I'm going to put about 7 in here. And these shorten up front. They're wider at the top and fade out. A little bit of a curl in their shape. So I'll keep working with those to tighten them up a little bit. And then I'm also going to come along between these and just pull in some feather barbs to break that up a bit. so we just don't have a hard line there between the black and white. All right, similar to what we did on the scapulars, I've got some white gesso now on my rake brush, and I want to kind of follow these feather groups that I carved in and put some indications of feathers in here without going overboard. Just kind of pulling them along. In this direction. So again, I hope you can see that. It's just a nice way to put some indication very quickly of feathers. And that white on white. I'll work the side pockets and then we'll do the breast with a fan blender. For the breast, using the white gesso with a fan blender and just pulling some breast feather tips in here and taking them around the corner to meet up with the side pocket there. Now I've got carbon black and I want to add these feather markings on top of the side pocket, and they kind of don't start until you get back a ways, and then there are a series of little arcs. I'll have to go back and clean some of that up. With the texture in here, it makes this a little more challenging. But about 8 of those marks. And then that black marking wraps around the rear of the side pocket here. And then kind of a few in this direction and fade out. Just taking some white gesso and pulling a few lines through this area. These are layered white feathers. So we'll just show that indication. I'm going to take a little carbon black on my detail brush and just go around the perimeter of the neck here where it meets the head and put a few feather barbs in there to break it up. I'll do the same thing on the cheek patch, and I did the same thing back here just to quickly break things up before we detail the colors on the head. All right, I've got the bird masked off, and I'm going to use phthalo green, watered down, so I can spray it and just focus on the crown, the side of the crown, and kind of the back of the head here. spray that a few times until the color gets built up a little bit. Now I've added a little brilliant green to the phthalo green to give us kind of a light intermediate green value. And I'm going to spray that on as a highlight. Like that. Just a quick look at that highlighting with the masking removed. And now we need to work on a few bill details just to finish things off. I've got carbon black and I'm just going to add the nail, just an outline to indicate the nail is there, and then on either side of the nail, put some little markings for that ridge. And then this line along the bottom kind of fades out. Now we need to get the nostril located. And it's going to be far down the bill. I've got reference here. This is life size, so I'll make an adjustment for that, but you can see the nostril enclosures are close to the tip of the bill. So I'll get a measurement on that and we'll kind of pencil those in. Make sure they're located right before I paint them. All right, I've got those chalked in, and I'm going to go in with a lighter gray value than the bill. And it looks like I need to lighten that just a touch. That is the same mix we used to highlight feathers on the rear, so it's Nimbus gray with burnt umber and carbon black. So I want these to be light enough to kind of show up like ridges, but not too light that they're too bright. And then we'll paint the nostril carbon black. Got carbon black and just painting in these nostril openings. So that gives us a pretty good representation of the nostril without having any carved detail on the bird that's going to soak up water or something in use. So finishing touch, I took a little of that light gray value and just hit some highlights, wrinkles, and edges of these ridges just to make them pop a little bit. After looking it over, I just felt like, and I took it outside, it felt like the head was a little too bright, which happens sometimes. So I went back with a mixture of phthalo green, that dark green, with just a touch of carbon black to darken that a bit, and then sprayed on the edges just to darken the overall look, and I like the results better now. I'm going to call that good. All right, that's a wrap on painting the Magnum Drake Common Goldeneye. Hopefully that has been helpful. It gives you a start on your own Goldeneye if you want to give it a shot. I've enjoyed painting this bird with you. I will include some high-resolution photos of the finished bird from different angles at the end of this video, so you have those for your reference. And good luck in your painting. Good luck in your carving. Next time we'll paint the hen to match up with this Drake. I hope you come back and check that out. Tom Christie signing out.